They say history is written by the victors, but tonight, history is being written by the man they couldn't quite bring themselves to kill. May 4th, 1814. The HMS Undaunted has vanished into the horizon, leaving behind nothing but a trail of salt and the echoing finality of an anchor dropping into the bay. I am Napoleon Bonaparte. To some, a tyrant; to others, a reformer, a conqueror, a god of war carved out of smoke and cannon fire; and to the rest of the world, I am simply an anomaly that has finally been corrected, silenced, not by death, but by distance. Look at this place, Elba, a grain of sand pretending to be a kingdom, floating at the edge of the Mediterranean like a forgotten thought. They granted me this principality, as if they were doing me a favor, a gilded cage, for a lion whose teeth they believe have been filed down by the politics of kings. But iron does not forget its shape. Neither does a man who has once held the map of Europe in his hands. The wind here is different. It does not carry the smell of victory. It carries salt, stone, and silence. And silence is louder than cannon fire when you have lived your life inside thunder. I step off the carriage. The ground is uneven, unfamiliar, almost unsure of itself beneath my boots, as if even the earth here is not used to carrying men who once commanded continents. The air watches me. Yes, watches. That is the only word for it. Not the adoration of Paris, not the fear of Vienna, but something emptier, something neutral, as though the world has decided I am no longer an event, only a memory still pretending to move. The residence awaits. Villa dei Mellini, my new palace. Stone walls, faded grandeur windows that open toward the same endless horizon. The sea, always the sea. They think water can contain me. They forget I was born from movement, from campaigns that reshaped the bones of Europe. And yet here I am, still breathing, still thinking, still calculating, alive, because they hesitated, because even kings fear the consequences of becoming executioners. So they chose something more merciful, or perhaps more cruel: exile. Inside, the corridors are quiet, too quiet. Footsteps echo differently when they belong to a man no longer followed by armies. Attendants bow, carefully rehearsed. Your Majesty. The title lands softly, like a coat placed over a collapsing throne. I nod, not in gratitude, but in acknowledgement of theater, because that is what this is now. A performance where everyone knows the ending, except me. Or perhaps I know it too well, and refuse to accept it. I walk the room slowly, maps already laid out, papers prepared, administration details of this island kingdom. 12,000 souls, 12,000. I have commanded hundreds of thousands across frozen rivers, across burning deserts, across fields where the sky itself turned black with smoke. And now, I am to govern vineyards, fishermen, and tax records. Is this the reward for remaking Europe? To measure glory in olive groves? To reduce empire to paperwork and patience? The sun begins to fall, and with it, something inside the world softens. The light here is not like Paris. It is not sharp, not absolute. It is forgiving, and I find myself despising it for that very reason. I have lived too long in the white heat of certainty. This golden decay feels like surrender disguised as beauty. I stop at the window, The sea stretches endlessly, not alive, not dead, just indifferent. It does not remember Austerlitz. It does not care for Moscow. It does not mourn the Grande Armée frozen in retreat. The sea only continues, as if all human ambition is nothing more than weather passing over its surface. Moscow, even now, I hear it, not cannons, but silence, the kind that enters bone. The retreat was not defeat in sound. It was defeat in absence. Men who once shouted my name, walking without words, snow swallowing entire legacies one step at a time. I close my eyes, and I am there again, not as emperor, but as a man realizing that nature does not negotiate. A voice breaks the memory, an attendant, hesitant. Your Majesty, shall I light the lamps? Yes. Debose exits quickly, relieved to leave the presence of a man history has not finished speaking about. The flame ignites, and shadows begin to form. I sit at the desk. Ink, parchment, silence. The tools of power have changed, but not disappeared. My hand moves automatically across paper. Drafting systems, reforms, structure. Even here, even now, the mind refuses to sleep, because a machine does not stop simply because it has been removed from its empire. It only changes the scale of its obsession. But then, the quiet returns, and with it a memory begins to breathe. Nay, Marat, Berthier, names that once meant loyalty, now echo like questions without answers. They stood beside me when Europe burned under discipline and design. They rode through smoke where men lost the shape of fear itself. And yet, when the winds changed, they learned to bow elsewhere. Not betrayal, perhaps, survival. But survival has never been a noble story, only a necessary one. And France, my France, or what remains of it, I see Paris not as it is now, but as it was when it bent toward order, when chaos became law, when revolution hardened into structure. They called me many things: revolution's heir, destroyer of kings, creator of empire, but I was only ever one thing, a man who believed history could be forced into shape. A laugh almost escapes me, almost, because the irony is too precise, to reshape history, and then be placed outside of it, to become an observer of one's own aftermath. The candles burn lower, and the shadows stretch longer, until the walls feel occupied, not by guards, but by memory itself, by every battlefield I have ever walked through, every victory, every loss, every decision that seemed like destiny at the time. Waterloo, a name that has not yet fully happened, and yet already exists in the air around me. Time feels unstable here, as if exile bends chronology itself, as if the future is already waiting to judge me. I rise, walk the corridor again. The palace is small enough that I have already memorized its geography. Every room feels like a conclusion pretending to be a beginning. Every door opens into the same truth. There is nowhere left to expand, only inward. I stop before a mirror. The reflection is familiar, but not identical to memory. The uniform still fits. The posture remains intact. But something in the eyes has changed. Not defeat, not surrender, something more dangerous. Calculation without immediate battlefield. They believe I am contained. They believe Elba is a solution, a political equation balanced by geography. But they misunderstand the nature of men like me. Containment does not erase momentum, it only redirects it. Outside, the wind shifts, and for a moment, I think I hear something beyond it. Not waves, not guards, but possibility. I walk out into the night. The guards salute, mechanical, respectful, uncertain. They do not know whether they are protecting a prisoner or witnessing a pause in history. Neither do I correct them, because certainty is something the world has not earned from me tonight. The shoreline is close now. Stone, salt, darkness, ships anchored in distance like questions waiting to be answered. British sails, watching patient. Assuming stillness means defeat. They mistake observation for surrender. A common mistake. I stand there, the sea breathing against the land, and for the first time since arriving, I do not feel like a man who has been placed somewhere. I feel like a man who has been paused, and pauses end when we'll decide so. Not geography, not treaties, not kings. I return to the villa. The lamp still burns, the ink still waits, and I sit again. But this time, I do not write orders. I write awareness, patterns, movements, fragments of intelligence carried by rumor and letter. France is restless, Europe is unstable, and stability is only another word for temporary silence. A silence I know too well, because silence is never empty. It is preparation. The wind outside strengthens, as if the island itself is speaking a language only ambition understands. I stop writing, I listen, and in that listening, something shifts, not in the world, but in interpretation of it. This island is not a prison. It is a vantage point, a place where distance becomes clarity, where exile becomes observation, where a man stripped of empire is finally able to see empire itself without distortion. I exhale slowly. Not exhaustion, not acceptance, but recognition. They thought they ended my story, but they only changed its perspective. Outside, the night deepens, the sea continues, unbothered, endless, and I understand now, it does not matter whether history is written by victors, because history is never finished while those who shaped it still breathe. I set the pen down, and for the first time tonight, I do not think of what has been taken. I think of what remains: time, memory, and will. The first night on Elba is not an ending. It is only the quiet before a decision the world has not yet learned to hear coming. And I, Napoleon Bonaparte, do not sleep.